Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of The Cup Duet Reviews, brought to you by Cup of Hemlock Theatre. This is our first duet review of 2026. Ooh, exciting. I will be your host for this episode, Ryan Borochovitz, and today we are going to be talking about Company, the musical, with music and lyrics, of course, by Stephen Sondheim and book by George Furth. This is a production presented by Talk is Free Theatre, the Barrie-based globe-trotting company that's constantly redefining what it means to be a regional theatre, and it is running here in Toronto at the Theatre Centre until February 8th, 2026, which is already the product of one extension, which was announced before it even opened. Today, to talk about this conceptual concept musical, I am joined by a returning guest, here on the Cup. You might remember her from our amazing episode all about another Sondheimian musical set in New York City, that being our episode on Tick Tick Boom. Lori Ossip, welcome back to the Cup. How are you doing today?
I'm so happy to be here, and I have caffeine. So those
Great.
are two pluses.
Well, you're already beating me to the next question. What is in your cup of caffeine today?
The same as last time. Iced espresso with milk. I'm very consistent. What's in your cup, Ryan?
So we are recording this in the morning after we saw the show, so I have my morning coffee, and it is in the cup because that is on brand. Hurrah, coffee. For this highly caffeinated discussion of the musical Company, we will, of course, have our pre-spoiler and post-spoiler segment. Granted, this is a very old, famous musical from the 1970s. Many people know it, but not everybody knows it, and we don't want to necessarily deprive people who aren't familiar with it from going on the journey. So we will begin with this non-spoiler section, where we'll talk all about just generalities, what we thought of it, and then we'll get into more detail later. So Lori, I will lob this to you. Do you want to give the non-spoiler plot description of what is Company?
Yeah, sure. What is a plot? But anyway, we'll start. So Company is a concept musical, as Ryan said in the beginning, around the themes of marriage and relationship and getting into your middle age and understanding different dynamics in your friend group and also in your personal life, set in New York in the 1970s, which is very important to the plot of the play about how different people interact and form meaningful connections. And it centers around Bobby on his 35th birthday, who is single, surrounded by people in various states of marriage and relationships, contemplating, does he want to be single? What does he want out of life? Why is he single? It ends with a very famous Sondheim song. So you might know that one, even if you don't know the actual musical. As a concept musical, it follows a nonlinear structure of the plot. So it's small vignettes discussing different themes surrounding relationships and friendships, covering different couples and following them. Centered around this birthday party event, but really just going all over the place time wise, going through some of his dilly dallyings, relationships, or one night stands type things, and then other meetings with people in relationships. But it's not a formal linear structure. So it ends sort of where it begins. Maybe it's a little loose. That is a concept musical. And fun fact, it is one of Sondheim's only financially successful musicals on its first go around.
Right. They've all since made
So,
tons of money, but most of them
yeah.
were flops in their original days.
So it was, for the most part, commercial. It was definitely a commercial success. It received mixed positive reviews. And over time, that's really only grown. People really love this one, which I really like Company. Maybe in my top 3 or 4 sometimes.
Okay.
So I'm a fan of this play.
Mhm.
What about you, Ryan?
Yeah. So I will say, and I said this on the previous first episode we did of 2026, reviewing the year that came and looking ahead at the year to come. I said in that episode, that, or rather, Mac outed me in that episode, that this is not one of my favorite Sondheim musicals. In fact, it might be my least favorite. I don't know. I would have to really think about a full ranking, and I haven't seen all of them or listened to all of them, so I cannot necessarily say that.
Your least favorite?
Okay, maybe that. Okay, here's the thing about me and Sondheim. I feel like I've said a lot of contentious things over the years about this musical in particular, about my relationship to Sondheim in particular, and a lot of it is probably fueled by exaggeration and frustration due to musical theater people I know, and I know a lot of them because this is the world I operate in, being very intense about Sondheim in ways that I have often found irksome, and maybe I respond inappropriately to how I really feel about things, but as just like a, oh, well, yeah, you feel that way, well, I'll say this kind of thing. So me saying Company, dislike Company, if I ever said I hate Company, that's probably not true. But like, it's, when people are like, how could you not like Company? I'm like, well, you know what? You being a badger about this just makes me dislike it even more. So you can probably find I know for a fact I have once or twice said on the record that I think Company is the most boring show I've ever seen. That's not true. That is an exaggeration, but
It's not boring.
it's not
No.
okay. I have seen boring versions of it, I guess I will say. So I have seen versions of Company that have bored me to tears, but it shouldn't be taken as a reflection on the show itself or what the musical could be. I think Being Alive, uh, one of the songs from it that you, I guess, did not spoil the placement of that song. I think that is one of the
But
best.
you did.
I didn't say where it shows up in the musical, so because this is non-spoiler. Listen, I think Being Alive is one of the best individual songs that Sondheim ever wrote. I just wish I felt that way about the rest of the show because to me, I always had this like thought about this show because of, my iffy feelings about it is that how did this become the big one, the one that like everybody loves that really took off, that was, as you said, his only financial success in his lifetime? Because like to me, I always felt like this should be a little night music insofar as a musical that has the one song that everybody knows, but unless you're a big diehard Sondheim head, you've probably forgotten about everything else about it. Like I always felt like Being Alive should be Send in the Clowns or have that same place in culture, and have the rest of the musical should reflect that type of popularity accordingly. I don't know, you're making faces.
Just look. I don't like clowns.
You don't like clowns like as
I
an
don't
art
like clowns,
form.
and I don't like that song. I'm sorry if that.
We are going to alienate all of the diehard Sondheim people in this episode. I feel like
I
that is
just look.
the tenor
Okay,
of what we're doing here.
it comes back to me being in undergrad and playing through a Pandora playlist because we used Pandora in
Mm-hmm.
2012, and I didn't pay for it, so I couldn't skip songs, and it would always come up in my playlist, Send in the Clowns, like consistently, and I couldn't skip it. I don't want to see the clowns. I don't want them anywhere near me. Also, clowns are creepy. No disrespect to the circus community. It's not my thing, and I don't like this song. I think Being Alive has no clowns, so
That is a
you know
point in its favor in your eyes, yeah.
we can talk about it when we get there in the post spoiler section. It's a better song.
Oh, I
I'm
agree.
sorry.
I said it's the best song that he's written, in my opinion.
Granted, Cynthia Dale doing Send in the Clowns when I saw it at the Kerner Center 3 or 4 years ago. 3 years ago, 3 years ago. Time
Yeah.
is a construct. It was pretty good. Like, hats off to Queen Cynthia Dale, but it's not my thing.
I bring up that comparison just because that is a musical, little night music that most people don't don't care about unless you're really into Sondheim. But everybody knows that song, or most people know that song. And
Agree.
I've always felt like it's weird that Company didn't accrue that same type of reputation. Like enough people love the whole of it that it stands on its own, as opposed to just being like, oh yeah, that's that weird musical that one good song came from.
No, I would argue that Company has a lot of hits that do stand alone from the musical. I mean, Lady to Lunch was
Yeah.
basically became Elaine Stritch's song. Like
Mm-hmm.
she was known for this one song. That's from Company. I think Drive a Person Crazy is kind of an earworm. People
Okay,
know that
here's the thing about that though. Drive a Person Crazy is a good. Me saying that it has the one good song doesn't mean I don't like other songs in this show or I don't think other songs are good. It's more just like Drive a Person Crazy. That's Sondheim writing an Andrew Sisters song basically. And
Yeah,
if you like the sound of that, you could just listen to the entire catalog of the Andrew Sisters. Like I don't see that as like such a North Star great thing about this musical. It's just like, yeah, he's good at dabbling in different genres and styles and musician types.
necessarily talking about quality. I'm more talking about if you're not a deep musical theater appreciator, which why are you listening to this podcast? All are welcome, but
Yeah, please
I
do.
mean, this is
Welcome, like, share,
yeah,
subscribe.
but this is super nerdy if we're being honest. But if you're not a Sondheim aficionado, there are going to be a lot of songs in this one that you just kind of know. Marry Me a Little, I think that one is sung in cabarets a lot. Not Getting Married Today, the Patter song.
Yeah.
That one's pretty well known. It drive a person crazy. I was trying to come at them. People know that one. Maybe even Barcelona.
I
I
think
knew that one.
really okay.
But they're or Side by Side. I mean, they
Yeah.
made a show Side by Side by Sondheim
Mm-hmm.
based on that the Act Two opener, I think. So there's a lot of hits in this one. So regardless of whether or not you like the piece,
Mm-hmm.
you can at least listen to something that makes you feel nostalgic, or
Feel
it's
alive.
always nice to hear something,
Yeah.
feel alive. Yeah.
I will also say, since we're going into the whole Ryan's weird, complicated feelings about this show, I think in general, I just don't love quote unquote concept musicals, or they're not my favorite types of musicals. Although I do like Cabaret a lot, but I feel like Cabaret has a better story. Well, and because it comes from a series of short stories that Christopher Isherwood wrote as semi-fictional diary entries about his time in Berlin, and then was turned into a very cohesive play by John Van Druten, I Am a Camera, and then that is what was turned into the musical. So it has, I think, a better, more cohesive story. And a funny thing about this is that several months ago, a friend of mine texted me randomly, just be like, "Hey, you know theater stuff. Can you explain to me what the difference is between a concept musical and a song cycle musical?" Because to them, it seemed like the exact same thing. And I had to think about it for a minute. And me, again, this all isn't like my main expertise in the world of theater. That's stuff I know enough about. This was the answer I came up with, and you tell me if you agree with this, because I'm sure there is a more proper technical definition, but I'm like going on vibes. I think this is what people mean when they distinguish the two. Two things. One, a song cycle musical is where the characters are singing in the story. All of the music is diegetic. That's why something like I would call Six or Octet, even that was recently a Crows, are like song cycle musicals, because in the world of the play they're singing. Whereas a concept musical structurally is the exact same thing, but doesn't make a thing about how diegetic the music is. So that's one. But the other feature that I came up with is that I think people use these terms to basically say, if it feels like Company, it's a concept musical, and if it feels like Jason Robert Brown's Songs from a New World, then it's a song cycle musical. Care to challenge these definitions? He's
It's
very
sort of semantics for
unscientific.
me.
Yeah.
I just think of a concept musical as a loosely structured piece where the individual songs or scenes are discussing a theme.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like a song cycle could go in a bunch of different directions. It could be literally just songs. It could be with no libretto at all, which happens. It could be strung together with scenes, but maybe it is more narratively structured or working towards some sort of conclusion. Company is very, like, I guess you could say it feels a little bit like in a theater class you're given a theme and then you come at it from different angles. If the theme is relationships, so then one person stages a middle-aged couple and one person stages an about to be married couple, and then there's the single guy who's just like, hey, I'm here too. But again, maybe we're overcomplicating. It doesn't really contribute to my enjoyment of the piece.
Yeah.
I like a more conceptual piece of art. I like a strong narrative structure. I think everybody does, beginning, middle, end. But sometimes it's nice to take a little bit of a breath, and it's sort of like exploring a different form of art, modern art, impressionist art, hyper realistic. You go to a museum, it's just a different flavor of musical. Back to the piece itself, it's about 2.5 hours, but I didn't find it boring. No, this production we can get to specifically, but as a concept, I think it actually moves pretty well. There's not too many songs, there's not too few songs. It cycles through the concept musical pretty quickly, so you don't get bored, because if you're bored of a scene, well, it just switches to another one. That's going to be about something else, so don't worry, just wait.
I think that's all fair. So to focus in on this particular production of it that we want to say very much about, general appraisals on what we saw last night.
Okay, so there were a lot of individual components of this production that I enjoyed, some individual performances, songs. As a big fan of this piece, and also Talk is Free Theater, their production of Blackbird last season, I loved.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it was a hard production because of the source material. She heavy, but great. I really liked it. This was not it for me as a whole. I didn't think it worked, and I was coming in so excited. I mean, Ryan can
You
attest that I've been
texted me
texting,
daily.
but I am so excited for this. I read a Sondheim biography by Stephen Silverman to get into the mood. I watched the 45-minute documentary about the filming of the original cast recording. I'm coming in like really excited, and it just something didn't click for me. Maybe I'll pause. Ryan, how did it work for you coming in from the opposite angle, which is skeptical of the piece, but obviously optimistic because you're always coming in hoping to like something?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, regardless of my misgivings, I do want to be clear that I went into this with a very open mind, hoping to be proven wrong. And I even said this on that previous episode, too, is that I would love to see in this show what everybody sees in it. I never want to dislike anything, and I especially don't want to dislike something that is beloved by all. Like, I'm not trying to just be a contrarian. This, I think I had a similar feeling to you, but kind of because it came from the opposite direction is I went into this production hoping to become a company convert, to be like, oh, okay, this is what I've been missing from all these previous encounters with it. Finally, a production really taps in and makes me get it. And I did not get that from this. I'm sorry to the very hardworking people who brought it to life. Like you, I'm a big admirer of Talk is Free's work. I'm a big admirer of Sondheim's work. But this one, just something about this musical very rarely clicks for me, and nothing about this particular production changed that opinion. But then it was helpful for me talking to you, talking to other friends and colleagues of ours after, knowing that something was off. It seems to be a bit of a consensus, at least among people we spoke to. I'm sure many positive reviews will come out as well that have more things to highlight, but I do think that there is probably still a better company out there that might convert me, I guess.
Yeah.
But I didn't necessarily like leave this feeling like, well, that was a bad production of Company. I'm like, yep, Company just still isn't really for me. But then hearing other people like yourself, like other friends of ours who really love Company, say similar things about the quality of this production makes me think like, okay, it's a bit of both, I guess, in terms of why this one didn't really give me that rush of, yes, this is what we want from Company.
Yeah, so I think I break it down into two different like actions of why it didn't exactly work for me. One is the specific production. There were a couple things tonally, it was kind of intense. The stakes felt very high. We can unpack that. That was clearly a choice. It came through, so I appreciate the commitment to it. It just lost a little bit of the fun and silliness that accompanies the heavy concepts, at least in ways that I've grown to appreciate this piece. And then also, I think this piece takes place in the 70s in New York, and I think there are some themes, or it feels a little, I don't want to say dated, because the ideas of connection and forming relationships are definitely not dated. But the idea of being single at 35 does not hold the same weight that I think it does in the 70s. And the fact that the production chose to effectively cast everyone at the same age, whereas in the original production, there's a little bit more age diversity. So you come at it from different angles. It didn't contribute to making it feel more relevant. No disrespect to the performers doing these roles. This is not a commentary on their performances, just the idea to cast everyone at the same age. And then it didn't make it more modern to me. It didn't really click.
Yeah, I think I'm with you on that. I do feel like there was a timelessness, a placelessness, but it's also kind of weird because it's hard to even say if they're like committing to that sense of the grand void that it feels like of time and place that they created here, because some of the costumes were very distinctly 70s, but others weren't. So it did give this sense of like, okay, is this trying to be the period piece, because I do think you're absolutely right. This story can really only make sense in the time and place in which it was written. That's not to say there's not something timeless at the kernel of it, but to be 35 and still single is really just not a big deal anymore.
As a woman
Hmm.
or a childbearing person,
Hmm.
there is always a biological clock.
Yeah.
Just that 35 perhaps is not the same marker that it was 30 years ago, thanks to modern medicine. But definitely there is a gender dynamic there, or especially that was explored in the 2020 and
Hmm.
2021 Broadway
Right.
revival, where they
Gender
cast
flipped.
Bobby
Bobby, yeah.
as a Katrina Lake.
Yeah.
So
Roberta.
perhaps there is more pressure for women, as there historically always is. Being a 35-year-old single man
Yeah.
is pretty common. Yeah, perhaps it's just contributing to this is all arbitrary anyway. That being said, though, forming personal connections at any age is always a struggle, but something that we strive to, or forming meaningful connections, and then also how they change over time. Maybe that is explored in other Sondheim musicals, perhaps Merrily We Roll Along. How do we grow with people? That is not discussed. So the age, just maybe if it was 45 and single,
Yeah.
it would hit the same. But the stakes don't feel as high. Maybe it feels like people are being a little judgy in a way that we wouldn't in 2026
Hmm.
even think to be. Okay. And there was one, I don't want to be disrespectful to the production, but I have to be honest that the music is the best part of this production for me. George Furth's script, his script is great. There's some really funny moments, but I came into this loving the score, right? I've never seen a production of Company live, but I have listened to the score a lot. And some of the vocal performances weren't there for me. Some of the harmonies weren't tight in a way that was noticeable, that hasn't been noticeable in other similarly scaled productions in the city. And also the fact that there was only a keyboard and a violin, that's definitely a space constraint, a money constraint. I get it. But this score, it sounded thin, especially they even replaced some of the harmonies in one of the songs, Drive a Person Crazy. They replaced it with a violin line. And that's just such an iconic part of the song. It's already thinning out music that deserves to be a full orchestra. And again, money constraints, I get it. But it just wasn't feeding my desire to listen to this score in its fullness. I don't know how they changed that. So it's kind of a loose criticism, but it didn't scratch that itch.
Hmm. Yeah, I think I'm with you on that. You've already said budgetary constraints are probably part of it. Of course, the company's based in Barrie, and then this is a production they're doing in Toronto. Perhaps they intend to tour it even more, so keeping the band as small as possible seems like a perhaps economically motivated choice in that way. I don't fault them for that, but it does limit how grand it can feel, especially when you do get to big numbers like Being Alive that really do have to bowl you over with their grandeur. I do think that the constraints, while understandable, aren't necessarily helping, and certainly not helping folks like me get on this train.
It breaks my heart because I am rooting for this company and I'm rooting for this score.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, ugh, I need a little more. Not to say that there weren't individual performances of individual songs that I really enjoyed. And especially when the group was singing in unison, that was really lovely. That
Mm-hmm.
felt very big. But overall, the impact was a little light.
Yeah,
Is there anything in the spoiler-free section before we get into specific
I think I'm
that you
content
had on mind?
to move on to the more nitty gritty, spoiler rich stuff, unless you have something else specific you want to get into.
To give an overall
Sure.
our vibes.
Sure.
So if someone is thinking, should I see the show? Should I not see the show?
Mhm.
If you like Stephen Sondheim or appreciate any of his Canada work and you want to be a completionist,
Mhm.
then of course go see Company because
That's your
it's a good
brand.
one, right? It's not inappropriate. right? There's no sexually explicit or the language is pretty basic. So it's appropriate for kids, but tonally, I don't really think, unless they're really theater kids, this is probably not their thing.
Yeah, I don't know what a kid would get out of the existential angst of Bobby being 35 and still single and living that life in New York City. Like it's not that it's not quote unquote for kids or appropriate for kids, it's just it's not for them. It's not their life experience that it's resonating.
If they would like to see a rendition of Company that is more age appropriate, I would highly recommend the early 2000s film Camp, where Anna Kendrick, as a 16-year-old, sings Ladies Who Lunch, and it's so funny. It's just this dissonance between this really young person singing about being around the block, so to speak. If you have kids, not the vibe. It's
To
also
be
not a
clear,
big spectacle.
yeah, to be clear, they're not marketing it for like all ages show. Like you have a kid, so I guess this is where your mind goes in terms of your theater going or consumption choices. But
The attention span of bouncy ball, so it's not going to work for him regardless. No, I mean, when I was 8 or 9, I think I went to Merrily We Roll Along, solely because my aunt saw the title and thought that this would be appropriate for kids, and I did not understand it. I hated it, and it probably contributed to why I didn't love Sondheim until university age, because I didn't get it. So I would hate for you to bring someone that might not get it, and then it sours their opinion moving forward. Some of the performances I thought were really compelling. I like Talk is Free Theater. I think they do really cool work. They're taking some risks in this piece that necessarily think worked for me, but they might work for somebody. So if you like kind of interesting choices and might be, it might be intriguing, but it was not my favorite Sondheim production. So I'm not enthusiastically sitting here saying go see it, but it might be your thing.
I think what I'm hearing from a lot of what you're saying, or synthesizing a lot of what we said so far, is I would be very curious if somebody has never seen Company before, never listened to the music before, what they would think of this production. Because while I have my misgivings about the material, I think the material is strong and it stands on its own and it shines through here, regardless of any little gripes we might have about some of how it was realized. So I do think somebody who knows nothing about Company but is primed to like Company would probably really enjoy this production. I think people like us, like others we know who have other ideas of Company in our heads that we compare it to, find more easy fault with it. On the flip side of that, somebody could just find that if there are these misgivings about this production, that it could scorn them against Company early on, and they'll think they don't like it when maybe a better realized production would give them more to enjoy at the outset. But I do think the material is there, even with some of the things, very small things that they changed, which we'll probably talk more about it post spoiler. You said earlier that like you think, obviously it's more about the score, the book scenes, those aren't preserved on the albums. The book scenes are funny. Like I think there's a lot of great, like the karate is always funny. There's a lot to
agree with you. I think the scenes are charming, especially in this specific production. I found myself really enjoying the acting scenes, but you go to a Sondheim show to hear the Sondheim score and then listen to the witty lyrics. So to be disappointed by the music, it's such a bummer.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Okay, I think we've been beating around the bush for a little while now. Shall we move on to the spoiler zone?
Can I ask you one final question?
Please do.
Can you give me your top 3 favorite Sondheims? Or top 4?
I can do top 3. Well, and I guess I'll do the top 4 in the process.
Because if this is your bottom, I would like to understand.
Okay, I have an eclectic list ranking for Sondheim, I will say. And my number 1 is Nobody But Me's favorite, and that is A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum. And
for you.
Yeah. Well, and like, here's my thing about that. I had the opposite experience of what you had with Merrily as a child. When I was a child or, early teenager, I forget how old I was exactly, I saw, it was my actually very first or second time going to Stratford ever. They did a production of Forum, and I was enchanted by that. And I thought it was like the funniest thing I'd ever seen. And the music was great, and the cast was amazing. In fact, I saw an understudy playing the lead of Pseudolus, and he knocked it out of the park. I never actually got to see Bruce Dow play the role, but then they brought that same production to Toronto a few years later, and I saw it again with Sean Cullen playing Pseudolus, and he was really funny too. So that it's my favorite. Like it holds that special place in my heart. And I was talking to another colleague of ours, like before the show, actually, and I kind of voiced that same opinion that Forum is my favorite Sondheim, and I know that makes me weird and says a lot about my like musical theater street cred. But what he pointed out is that like, well, that's actually like the most perfect musical that Sondheim wrote. The thing about Sondheim that makes him so brilliant is that he wrote very imperfect musicals that were like his own thing and changed the game. But like as far as like classical musical theater structure, like that's the Platonic ideal. That's the best one he created. But that's not what people like about Sondheim. So it says probably a lot about me that that's my favorite Sondheim. So that's my number one. Number two, Sunday in the Park with George, I think is probably the best, like fully cohesive piece that he's written. I will call that my second favorite, and I recognize that it's better than Forum, but doesn't hold that same place in my heart that Forum does. And three, I do think Into the Woods inches ahead of Sweeney Todd for me. So that would be like my 3 and 4. Into the Woods first, and then Sweeney.
That is a fair list.
Okay.
And it is very much on brand with hipster theater Ryan guy.
Is it though? It's not even because I'm like, oh, I like Forum because like I'm so cool. Like I saw it as a kid and it meant a lot to me. Like that's I don't know.
It's like my top are Passions and Pacific Overtures and Anyone Can Whistle. Like no.
No.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Yeah, sorry, what is your top 3?
Okay, so do we count West Side Story, which is by Leonard Bernstein, lyrics by Stephen Sondheim?
For the purposes of this list, let's only do ones where he wrote music and lyrics.
Okay, well, I'm still going to say it because I love West Side Story.
West Side Story is great, yeah.
I love the music to that. Oh, so good. My favorite is Sweeney Todd. Okay, like by a mile, I think Sweeney Todd in itself is a near perfect musical. It's in my top 3 probably favorite musicals, period. By anybody. I love Sweeney Todd. It's so weird. It's so silly. It's so gory. I love it. I love it. I love it. No notes. Second, if we're not, West Side Story is separate. I don't know. That's in my list. It's got to be in my list. If we're not including it, probably Assassins comes next to me. I saw Assassins in 2012, 2013, in that range in Chicago, and one of their cool smaller theaters there. The Chicago theater scene's a lot like Toronto, a bunch of small independent theater companies that are professional, but it's not as centralized. And then they get the touring productions. Very, very similar in that way. And it was awesome. It was so fun and also weird and quirky.
Yeah,
and
I like Assassins.
Kind of off the beaten path.
Assassins is a good musical. It doesn't make my top 4, but I think it's a good one.
And probably Company. If it's a theme, because it's a little... What I love about Sondheim is that he's so distinctly, his voice is so distinct. You hear music and the way that look, I study music, but I'm not like a musician in that way. Like, but you can hear it and it sounds like him. It's so, it doesn't blend together like a lot of other beautiful, brilliant writers at the time. It's distinctly his. I love that. And I therefore appreciate the pieces that maybe are a bit more quirky. That are a little more to some people's taste, to some not to others, and as a result, maybe that's reflective in my list. Plus West Side Story.
Yeah, I love West Side. Okay, for counting West Side Story, that would probably be my number 1 too. And Gypsy would probably rank pretty high as well. I don't know if it would like crack that top 3, but yeah, they're good musicals. He's a great lyricist.
He is very witty, very funny, but. You know, I like Company.
And so therefore your testimony, I think, means more than mine on this one.
No, definitely not.
I don't know. I think it's good that we have 2 very different perspectives on it going in and yet still sort of reach some kind of consensus about this particular production.
When I review things in a more formal capacity than this, I understand that taste is a preference. So you and I come in with our individual taste levels and things that resonate with us and things that don't. But I try to remain, you can never be objective. You're reviewing something, but try and look at the composite parts, the staging, the music, the scene work, how the piece flows, the stylistic consistency, and then artistic choices, and evaluate those as thoroughly and as objectively as I can. So a great Raventown is a good example of
Mhm.
this. Stylistically, it was not my thing. This was a show at Tarragon, but I could appreciate that it's a good play, right?
Yeah.
Even if it wasn't my jam, I could appreciate it. So
And that's a good example that you bring up because you actually, in the review that you wrote for it, you addressed both that like all of these technical parts are really good. So then, but then why did I give it a 3 out of 5 when it seems like I'm giving it at least a 4 out of 5 appraisal? Because it's not for me. And I think acknowledging that element of taste and preference isn't meaningless because somebody like you who has similar taste and you could watch this and be like, yeah, everything's working, but it's not working for me. And your review speaks to both the working and the not for me part of that equation. And people will have different tastes. I think the kind of when you tell somebody, oh, you have good taste, you're basically just saying you have my taste. We agree about because there is no objective taste in about any of this kind of thing. Uh, you know, hundreds of years of aesthetic philosophy have been grappling with this question, and so it's not a clever point of mine that to say that oh yes, there's no such thing as objective taste, and step aside Immanuel Kant, but I don't know. I do think that there is value to voicing, this isn't really my thing, but this is working, this isn't working. And also just putting that in dialogue, like we're doing right now, that we have different relationships to this being our thing. And somebody watching this or listening to this might agree with you or with me more so. And that's okay. We're trying to account for this fractious element of taste, which is so unquantifiable in this way. All right. That's a lot of pre spoiler. Shall we put a birthday cake up on the screen that says spoilers on it? Seems like every time you and I do an episode, it's some kind of cake spoiler shield. We had Twinkies in the last one.
yeah, that sounds like a great idea. And also, where was the cake in this production?
You know where
Why
the
was
cake?
there no cake?
Okay, okay. Let's start here because we're in spoilers now, folks. There's a lot of miming in this production, and I don't begrudge it for that. And yes, for those listening in podcast form, Lori is trapped in a box right now, like a good French mime. You can't hear her because that's the point. Yeah, there's a lot of miming, and I don't have a problem with that as like a stylistic conceit. The problem is that I think it's very clearly done here to save on a prop budget as opposed to what does it say? Like a really good example of a show that I didn't love, but I think it did a version of this very well. Last season, Canadian Stage and Necessary Angel Theatre Company did a show called Winter Solstice, a German play that they produce here. I didn't love that production, but that one really committed to like there are no props. Everything was really done that way, and like the set was very bare aside from these kind of like walls on the side that had light built into them. And I think that it felt like a choice there. Here it feels again like a budget saving measure. And the part that I think more than anything really revealed the lack of intentionality in this choice to mime is that Bobby blows out the birthday candles or tries to and fails, which is part of the joke of the show. But then he instantly steps forward into where the cake should be. Like, to be a mime, you must realize the absent props and understand their place in the world. But for you to like blow forward into the cake and then take a step forward, you're standing in cake right now.
Yeah, I think you bring up a really good point. It didn't, I love a minimalist
Mm-hmm.
theater experience. Not always, but all the time. And especially with a concept musical, it's a very internal concept. Like you're dealing with less tangible things, more concepts. My point is conceptual, you can be a little bit more minimalist. It felt there. The music, the set, the props, the costumes. I am not a 1970s expert, so your comment on some felt very 70s, some didn't. Maybe they're all period
Yeah, that comment
appropriate.
wasn't.
I don't know. Didn't They were fine. They were there. Kirsten Russell's skirt was really cool. That's all I kind of remember. Oh, and the purple pantsuit was like,
Yeah.
Hillary Clinton is going to see this show and be like, in 20 years, I'm going to make this a thing. Yeah, it was just a little skimpy. The only thing they didn't skimp out on which they went full force into, was the choreography.
Mm-hmm.
There was a lot of choreography in this, and it felt a little out of place that there was dancing or at least shuffling in motion when everything else was scaled back. It was a little disjointed for me.
Yeah. I liked a lot of the choreography, like individual.
Yeah.
I really liked though when they kept doing this thing in a lot of those big group numbers, because that really was a very good physical embodiment of that coercive pressure. You got to get married, you got to do the thing, you got to follow these life
Mm-hmm.
milestones. I like that, but I do feel, yeah, it was over choreographed. A lot of stuff that could have been more contained. I do think a lot of individual characters gesticulate a lot, and look at me calling the kettle black here because yes, I talk a lot with my hands, but if I'm in a musical, I think I would have liked to see a little more bodily restraint and like make gestures meaningful. There was just too much kind of pointing at things, like, yeah, I don't know. I think, and I wouldn't even necessarily know. So in some cases where it's in the songs, yes, we could call that an aspect of choreography, but other times it just felt like a lack of intentionality with a lot of what was going on stage.
I think the original Michael Bennett did the choreography in the original production, and they called it musical staging.
Hmm.
So it was more, yeah. This was more. There was dancing.
Yeah, lots of dancing.
Like, yeah, I don't know if I'd say over choreographed necessarily. I see what you're saying about intentionality. It was just the fact that everything else was so played. It was just so minimalist that it just stuck out.
Yeah.
So either raise the stakes of everything, except for the tone. The tone felt very tense the whole time. Yeah, it was just disjointed.
But while we're on the subject of choreography specifically, they cut one number, well, they cut a few numbers here, but in particular, there's a number called TikTok, which haha, that's funny, that's an app now. But it's during the scene when Bobby is making love to April, which we had a staging of that we might want to talk about in a moment. But while they're passionately doing it, there's like this whole dream ballet sequence in like previous staging of this that's led by Kathy, one of his other lovers, the one who says that she's moving to Cape Cod and going to get married to someone else, where like she and the other
played by Donna McKechnie. Sorry to interrupt you.
Donna
It
McKechnie
probably was.
Sorry, in a previous production, you mean, or
let me look it up. Yeah, she was
yeah.
the original. Donna McKechnie is like a very brilliant dancer, and she was in the original cast. Okay, sorry.
No, it's all good. Yeah, so, but like that's, if like there's any like kind of number to like pull out all the stops for all this choreography, like that would be it. And they cut that to the point where like we have the songs that lead up to that, like the poor baby, where all the other ladies are like, oh, I'm worried about Bobby, and like we see that he's doing fine, kind of, at least in that moment, or he is making progress romantically with one of his prospects. But yeah, and then that sort of like leads into this whole dream ballet sequence that, yeah. So it's, I guess I just bring this up to be like, I'm curious about the choices in choreography. Like, I don't know, I do stand by the over choreograph, certainly at times comment. And I think choreography was treated as a priority for this otherwise pretty minimal production. So why not lean into that in the instrumental number that really prioritizes dance in that way?
I mean, that's probably a casting decision, if anything. I just pulled up the list of people who have been noted to play this part. Donna McKechnie, Charlotte D'Amboise, Chrissy Whitehead. These are all dancers, like notable dance parts. So if you don't have, and Donna McKechnie is arguably like one of the best dancers ever. She's unreal. She was Michael Bennett's muse. If you don't have someone of that caliber, cut the dream ballet. Not the best dancer ever, but someone who is predominantly a dancer. That being said, though, there were a bunch of people in the cast that seemed like they were great dancers.
Yeah, and like,
so I noticed. So maybe they had it.
Kathy, this production was played by, just pulling up the names here, Madeline Criez. Apologies to everybody if we are mispronouncing any of your names. I don't know if she's like a great dancer. Like, she could, but she also could have been cast in a different role if they wanted to cast her, but she doesn't have the dance chop. And I that's not me saying she doesn't have the dance chop. We just didn't see it. She was fine in the group numbers doing the dancing. So I don't know. It's a curious choice, I guess.
That's an interesting point. That they leaned into the dancing and then cut the dancing.
Mhm.
Can we shift a little gears and talk about some other cuts or changes to the
Sure.
material that may or may not have worked for us? It
Okay.
seems like a
Mhm.
reasonable place to go. The kiss in Act Two.
Okay, yeah, let's talk about that. uh,
Okay, so bring you on the speed a little bit.
mhm.
It didn't create the character of Bobby. I think the piece was based on individual one act plays
Yeah,
that were strung together. The character of Bobby might have been plucked from one of these plays, but it was basically like formed together
mhm.
and definitely bolstered. And then centering all these different couples, they picked a single guy to be the center.
Yeah.
So it was
As I
whatever
under
he was in the original piece, it was definitely like made more.
as I understand it, George Furth wrote, I believe it was like 11 individual short plays all on a common theme, and most of them were a married couple was the center of it, and they had a single friend who was kind of like this Greek chorus commenting on it. So I think the brilliant masterstroke that Sondheim or perhaps Hal Prince brought to the table here was that, hey, what if we make that single friend the same person in all of them, and then he becomes the protagonist, and that was the glue that put it all together. Sorry to continue.
Thank you. You are much more articulate than I am. No, but what I'm saying is he didn't necessarily create this role. In some ways he did, in some ways he didn't. But in real life, Sondheim was single for a long while. He found his like life partner later in life. He was gay, and I'm not sure if he was publicly gay at this point in his career.
Like, definitely
I
not at this point in
don't.
his career. Like, maybe
Yeah,
people in his circle would have known, but yeah, you most public figures were not openly gay unless they're willing to really be out and proud about it. And him as a single man didn't have the need to be that way.
yeah, okay, totally fair. And also in the 70s, yeah, different environment. Being 35 and single, and so there's definitely a lot of Sondheim as a person that he's injected into this character, whether it's not him, but there's a lot of elements that mirror his real life. And I think the piece in general just comes across as someone thinking deeply about what it means to be in a relationship or being single or not. That mirrors his life. That being said, bringing it back to why we were on topic with this in the first place, one of the reasons that is sometimes played as an undertone and sometimes bolstered depending on who you cast as Bobby to explain why he might be single is perhaps he's gay. And perhaps he's not in a relationship with a woman because he doesn't want to be. And in the 70s, perhaps that would have pack a big punch. Like it would be worth something in a way that today, one, being 35 and single is like fairly common, and two, being gay is not really an excuse to be single.
Certainly not in New York.
In the not in New York, or in the same way that it
Yeah.
would have been. I think there's less of a stigma attached to gay marriage, right? As a thing, right? So
Yeah. Progress. Good.
to say that that's the reason why he's single, or at least to lean in as the primary reason, seems a little bit like a cop out to me, a little bit not relevant in the way that it might have been in the past.
Mhm.
Being said, there's this scene that was cut and then subsequently a beat that was added to this production, which is what we were getting, where Bobby and another male character.
Yeah, Peter, I think, is the one who's married to Susan, the Southern Belle, and they get divorced, but he continues doing his responsibilities. Jeff Irving played him in this production.
Yeah, thank you. They kiss.
Yeah.
Now, they being Bobby and Jeff
Peter.
Irving, Peter.
Yeah.
And that has so many implications for me because one, it's kind of implying that the reason Peter got divorced is because he's either gay or wants to explore that part of his sexuality, which seems like reductive. Like the implication didn't really land with me, and then also the implication that that's the reason why Bobby is single. I've already gone on a tangent to explain why I don't think that really works. So we're leaning into that in a way, and then do you want to And maybe pause. Do you want to talk about what they cut? And
Yeah,
this
because I
is what
think
was replaced.
knowing what they cut, it's understandable why this feels like a reasonable attempt or something to play around with. I don't think it works in the execution personally, but in that scene where it's one of the like it's like the third to last like major scene because we've been introduced to this couple Peter and Susan earlier on in a very short scene in Act 1 where he's just like, wow, you guys are the perfect couple, I'm so happy for you, and if you ever leave her I want to be the first to know. Well, you're the first to know, we're getting a divorce. And it's just like a funny haha little scene. But then we come back to this couple in Act 2. Bobby brings one of his girlfriends, Marta, over to visit them. And then the two men have this moment together where, after Peter has already said, well, yeah, I still live here, I still have responsibilities to my family, just because we're divorced doesn't mean we're separated, which is also like an extension of that funny haha. He has like a heart to heart with Bobby about how he like asks him, have you ever done or had any homosexual experiences, is how he puts it. And Bobby actually says, yeah, like once or twice. I forget the exact phrasing, but like Bobby acknowledges that he has experimented with his sexuality in that way. And Peter sort of like kind of like seems to be hinting at like, sometimes you just feel a connection, like two people, it could be anything, even two guys like me. And then Bobby kind of like has a pause and like, you're joshing me, ha ha ha, you had me going full sport or whatever. And then the scene kind of like ends. So that is an interesting scene that exists, which I actually think was cut in the 70s and only restored to the musical in the 90s. I believe I read that somewhere. That gives credence to a few things. That one, there is this queer subtext to what's going on here, and Bobby even acknowledging that he has experimented and maybe is interested in that kind of thing, but compulsory heterosexuality banishes the thought and he doesn't necessarily indulge in that, or he's just not into Peter in that way, or he thinks that would be like a weird thing in their friendship. I don't know, any number of ways you could read that. But that queerness exists in a version of the original, probably the intended version that had to be censored for a couple decades until they could finally put it back in. What they did instead here is they cut that entire conversation and replaced it just with the lights turn pink. These two men slowly walk towards each other and just share a passionate kiss and then say nothing to each other. And then we move on to Ladies Who Lunch. So, what's
Drink
going
to
on?
that.
Yeah. Cheers. So, okay. First of all, I'll say if this is your first experience with Company, if you've never seen it before, never listened to anything before, you would just assume that this is the text. And you'd be like, oh, okay, I get it now. Bobby is gay. Or at least bi. Or like
Very, very explicitly displayed.
Yeah.
Like
And it is a tender, passionate moment between these two men, one of whom recently divorced his wife, and the other is a confirmed bachelor who's having trouble getting married today. So, yeah, it's a choice. What I think it's trying to do is take what feels like simmering subtext in that conversation in the original, although granted it is like literal text. They're talking about homosexual relations, and Bobby even says that he's partaken in it, and saying like, what's the logical conclusion of that, or what is this subtext we trying to say? It's 2026, baby, we could just do it. And I think that's the mechanism of the choice behind it. But what that ultimately does is, I honestly think what could have worked for this, I don't think I would have liked this much either, but for different reasons, is if they keep the whole conversation, but actually have it culminate in a kiss and then have Bobby go, you're joshing me. You had me going there, like he says. Like, keep the kiss if you want, but to replace the conversation with the kiss, one, the kiss comes out of nowhere. It feels like it's completely recontextualizing, I think, and then it doesn't have that framing of the awkward pussyfooting, for lack of a better word, around this topic. That if this is indeed set in the 70s and some of the costume choices indicate that they're still setting it in the 70s, kind of, it's just very strange. And the fact that the lights change too. Yeah, the lighting change is a choice because it almost feels like we're entering a dream space in this. Like, is this even really happening? Is this an expression of Bobby's desire? Is it an expression of Peter's desire? Hard to say. It's very odd. And then to not have the contextualizing conversation either before or after, and then just move on to the scene where he basically rejects Joanne's sexual advances and then sings about how he wants to be alive. It really feels like it's putting a very fine point on the queer reading. And I'm not even against the queer reading. I think there's a lot of merit to that, but it's removing text, pretending it was always subtext, and then turning it into pure subtext that becomes the textuality of staging. It's very odd. I don't know. I've talked for a while, so you say stuff.
I hear you. I agree. I think okay. Let me try and be succinct with my point, or try and synthesize it. I think what irks me is the idea that the definitive reason why Bobby is single is because he has not explored his sexuality this way. And this production leans into that and say, at least if you don't know the piece and you only see this one scene of the men kissing, you're like, oh, that's why he's single. He's gay. So that could be part of it, right? It could be part of that he wants to explore his sexuality in different ways. But it's not really about that, at least in 2026. It's not, does he want to be with a man or a woman? It's, does he want to be with someone? What is it like to someone? Exactly, somebody. Does he want to be in a relationship? What does a partnership look like? It doesn't really matter who it's with. So, but leaning into that's why he's single. It's like, oh, so are all 35-year-old people single because they're just not with the right gender sexuality? Like, and that's no. There again could be part of it, but it could also be they have trust issues, or they're not good with commitment, or have internal struggle. Like, there are millions of reasons, or they just don't want to be. People don't want to be coupled. So it's simplifying something, or leaning into a simplification that I just find not interesting in that way.
Yeah, I hear you. I'll, in slight defense of it as a choice, I don't know if it has to go to the extreme that you're reading into it, which I think is a valid extreme to read into it, but it doesn't have to be so totalizing as, oh, because Bobby has these pent up, closeted feelings that are finding expression in the scene, therefore that must be the case for him, and therefore is the case for all 35 and single people. Like, that feels like a bit of an over extrapolation, I guess.
Extreme, but if you don't know the piece,
yeah,
and this is the scene you're seeing, I think that's kind of, and it's very conceptual. This production in itself goes to quite extremes. I think they play things for life and death. I think being alive is about being alive to them versus not. It is at least the ladies who lunch goes. It is a little bit of a breakdown at the end, that's for sure. But this one was pretty intense. The tone was very dark. So I don't think it's as much of a stretch as other productions.
I guess I maybe challenge the assumption, again, not unreasonable assumption, that Bobby must be the avatar for all people who are still single at 35. I think a lot of people gravitate towards him for that reason, but to say that if that's his reason, therefore it must be everybody's reason, I think we can grant him a little bit of his own individuality as a compromise on that point, perhaps. While we're talking about Bobby and high stakes and everything, we haven't said a lot about the cast yet. I do think we should probably talk about at least two players in particular, and then we can maybe each give a shout out to someone we really liked. We have our lead, Bobby, Aidan deSalaiz. Again, apologies if we're mispronouncing anybody's name. He's the show. We should probably talk about him. And I think we should probably talk about Gabby Epstein as our Joanne, as one of the other leading players in this, and then we can take a moment to shout out others we want to talk about. But Bobby Bubi. Let's talk about Bobby. Bobby Bubi. Bubi is how they said it often in this show.
Yeah. You've been to a bar mitzvah? just curious. Bubi.
Yeah. Sorry, not to single anyone out in particular. I just thought it was funny how the inconsistency of the pronunciation.
I'm so sorry. It's funny that you say that, though. If you watch the documentary of them recording, Stephen Sondheim spends an extensive period of time with the actress, in this case, saying that word specifically. So it's worth a watch. It's very funny.
Okay, let's talk about Bobby.
You want to start, or you want me to start?
I would love for you to start, actually,
okay.
if you don't mind. What did you think of Aidan's performance as our lead?
Finds Bobby to be very likable, very endearing, tortured poet
Mm-hmm.
type, where you could really feel his internal struggles, wanting to be in a relationship, but then grappling with what that means, feeling bad for himself, also not the highs and the lows. And I think this is more of a directing commentary than his performance.
Mm-hmm. Director also is Dylan Trowbridge, who we haven't named yet at any point in this,
Yes,
however long we've been talking.
which is a great moment to bring the time. I didn't think that his epiphany at the end felt justified. His character sort of stayed at the same place the whole show. And to we're in the spoiler territory. Towards the end of the piece, Bobby sings "Being Alive," which to me at least is, and notoriously Sondheim actually really didn't like this song as the ending. He
Really?
thought it was a cop out.
Oh.
Yeah.
It's the
In
best
fact,
song he's ever written, in my opinion.
not that he didn't like the song, but the original ending of the show was going to be Bobby being like, F this, I don't want to be in relationships suck. And then the producer said, no, you can't end the show like that. So what is there is "Being Alive," which is somewhat optimistic, of Bobby starting by saying, oh, somebody is so annoying, and like people in relationships, they nag you and it's annoying. And then he goes into, but people in relationships, somebody to hold me too close, somebody do that. And that, sorry, it goes someone. So he's talking about someone will do this in a relationship. Yes, there's nice things. And then it ends with somebody hold me too close, somebody, which is Bobby's call to say, I think I might want this. And he's not ready yet. There's no definitive, yes, I'm in a relationship now, or I want to pursue one of these women. It's, I'm open. And I'm taking that moment. So it's sort of a non-ending. And Sondheim hated that because he's like, we just spent this whole time trying to make a point about being in a relationship. And the point is maybe, which is fair, but it's a gorgeous song. And in this production and in a stigmata pose. So, which is choice. And all of this is to say, it didn't feel like he was working up to that. It was performed well enough, but narratively, I didn't feel like it was earned. Even in a arguably unearned random song that's just placed at the end of a musical for Sondheim, it didn't feel earned.
Yeah, that's fair. I think overall with Aidan's performance, I like him as Bobby, if that makes sense. I think he's a good choice for the role. I think he has a bit of what I would call a Neil Patrick Harris type energy, and that is a pretty famous pro shot version that with the New York Philharmonic in 2011. We've actually reviewed that production previously on the Cup. Maybe if you're watching on YouTube, that's showing up in the top corner. I wasn't on that episode. Mac did that as a duet review with our friend Graham, who was very enthusiastic about the queer reading of Bobby, so that's something. But yeah, I think he has Aidan's performance. I like what you said about the various layers that he put into it. I do think there's like just enough queerness in him that reading feels compelling, but it's not like so overwhelming that you're like, oh well, that's exactly what he. I think he plays the scenes like on the dates with his lady friends like pretty like well and compellingly to counterbalance some of that. That it feels it's ripe with possibilities, I guess, is how I felt watching him through most of it. But then I agree with you that I didn't really feel the being alive at the end. Something about one of the things I really love about that song is the way that like when all the other married people are like chiming in throughout it, each time we go back to Bobby singing, it's always like on a note of one of his friends saying, "You're onto something, Bobby. Keep going." Like, and that's what builds the momentum in the song that we have these people badgering him, but then one of his dear friends is like, no, wait, keep going. You're figuring it out. And I didn't feel him figuring it out in here. It felt like a karaoke rendition of this song in many ways. And that's not to say that it's bad or poorly sung, because a lot of people, musical theater people, love singing the song at karaoke and they love belting it out and doing it well. But it didn't feel like the culmination of the arc in the way it's supposed to. It felt like the way you would sing the song if you did it in isolation, as karaoke famously is by design. Does that make sense, or am I just being weird about this?
So let me pause on Aidan and let me talk more broadly for a second.
Sure.
Across the board, I really enjoyed the scenes. And some of the acting beats were really great. I've seen a lot of musicals in Toronto, big, Mervish productions, smaller indie theaters, and I really didn't think that the it was as tight musically and scene wise as some other shows I've seen. It's just I didn't overall. I think it was not the right cast, and that's not to say that individual moments really didn't shine because they did, but it just something wasn't gelling for me as an ensemble, and I feel really bad. And it's not that they were doing bad work; it just together it felt slightly off.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of these performers in other things and loved their performances, so I know they do good work.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that it was very clear that they love this piece. I mean, and just an enthusiasm of the dancing alone and playing up those silly moments, but it didn't work as a cohesive unit to me.
Yeah,
I feel bad saying that.
I'm with you both for the sentiment and the feeling bad about it. Again, we all wanted to love this so much. You were so excited. You texted me every day about how excited you were going into this. So yeah, it's sad to leave a show that you were really looking forward to feeling these kinds of iffy feelings. Do you want to talk about Joanne, the ladies who lunch?
Okay, Gabby. I adore her as a person. I know her. I've worked with her. I've seen her in a lot of shows. I think her voice is beautiful. I think probably, I'm not being objective here, but I think she was probably the tightest vocals of the show. I think clean, consistent, well performed. I loved her acting, especially in the first song.
Like Little Things You Do Together?
The Little Things You Do Together. I thought that was very charming, very sweet. Gabby is not an older woman. Gabby is young. I mean, the whole cast feels like the same age. And this is no slight to her. This is a casting choice. And I mean, if you've got Gabby Epstein on your roster, I don't know why you wouldn't use her. So I totally get it. I liked her rendition of Ladies Who Lunch. It was again leaning into the intensity in a way that it maybe has been played more lightly in the past, but that is in line with the rest of the tone of the piece. So when you give Gabby a note, like, she will follow through with it, and she clearly delivered on that objective. So I can respect that. And I did like the purple pantsuit. So I think she delivered the performance that was asked by the direction given. Again, though, the fact that everybody was cast really the same age, or their reading is the same age on stage, except for April, the flight attendant. She felt younger. But apart from that, they all felt like 30s, maybe early 40s. That character of Joanne is not able to provide that older woman wisdom I've been around the block, I've seen things, you can trust me. It doesn't work when why is she more trustworthy? Why has she seen more things? So that is not something that anyone, your age is not something you control. She didn't read as old to me. She still looks pretty young, but again, she sounded great.
Yeah.
And her acting, given the directives, I thought was very effective, but just a casting choice.
Yeah, agreed. I've seen Gabby many times. I know she's very talented. I think she exhibits her talents here. I do think, okay, this is before I even get into what I think about her performance. I think Joanne is a strange character in this musical, just like on paper, and for a lot of reasons. I feel like the role has been puffed up a lot to make it a star vehicle for someone like Patti LuPone, because she only has like one really prominent scene as a character, and that's at the very end, the one that leads into Ladies Who Lunch, and then does Bobby a big favor, whatever that kind of means, which I've always sort of struggled with. Why is this the big thing that leads him into being alive? But people will get from that what they get from that. But prior to that scene, she's like a non-character. She shows up in group numbers, but they give her little bits of music that justify getting a star to play her. Things like the little things you do together, and a few other moments throughout where she gets featured vocals in what would otherwise seem like they should be ensemble numbers. So if you are going to get someone like Patti LuPone or even Gabby Epstein to play her, you want to cash in on that star power in a way. But when Bobby sings the song Someone is Waiting, where he's thinking about all of his married female friends, like a little bit of each of them to compile the perfect wife in his mind, the song that I always just thought was kind of gross personally, about how he thinks about all of his married friends as the to Frankenstein together the perfect woman for him. When he mentions Joanne in that, the name Joanne has not yet been said aloud in the musical. She hasn't had a scene that establishes her as a character. Now, we watching it know who Joanne is, and we know Ladies Who's Lunch, but imagine encountering this for the first time, as I did the first time. I'm like, who's Joanne? Which one is she? And like, granted, like, yeah, it's hard to keep track of all of these women's names, all the men's names too. There's too many characters in the show, and you hear their names in their scenes, but the names are hard to keep track of. But like, there's just something I find very just like weird about just the presence of Joanne in this musical and the way that she gets puffed up into this star character that we're supposed to. I think when he says Joanne in that song, we're supposed to know which one he means by virtue of the fact that we can kind of, chances are she's cast as somebody big, and if you've perused the program, you know, okay, that's Joanne. But it's strange. It's a strange presence in this piece, I guess. So I bring all that up to say you get somebody like Gabby, who is well known among this cast. I'd say she's one of the bigger names in it, and many of us have seen her perform elsewhere, and she definitely has stage presence and charisma to spare. But I feel like she's leaning a little hard into that starness of the role in all these scenes. And in many instances, I felt like she's doing a Patti LuPone impression. Like she really like puts on this like thick voice, this affectation, and a lot of that I think is to make her present older than she is, because as you pointed out, she probably isn't old enough to be playing this role. But it, to me, it feels very caricatured, certainly in a lot of the book scenes and also in a lot of the singing.
You know what I was just thinking? I think she'd make a great Bobby.
That, yes, if we were doing a gender flip Bobby, Gabby would be my first choice of who to cast. 100%.
I don't even think that a gender flip version is avant-garde. It just seems
It's been done already.
it
Yeah.
seems it's not that it just seems like yeah, it can work. Like it doesn't really matter what Bobby's gender is. It doesn't contribute to anything. And she would sound amazing singing that score. And look, it's hard for me to be objective. I love her. Okay, so talking about Joanne in the piece,
Mm-hmm.
I never really thought about it too deeply because if you have Patti LuPone or Elaine Stritch, I do not care why she's on stage. Just get her on stage. She's a fun contribution. And with a concept musical, which is more loose in structure anyway, you can kind of get away with that stuff to be like, yeah, he has a middle-aged woman friend. That's cool.
Yeah.
Why not?
I'm not even questioning the logic of that. Like, why is he friends with this couple? It's more just like yeah, it feels like they're there to fill like a star type role in a way. Sorry, go on. I cut you off.
Totally feel you because again, if you got Patti LuPone, I don't care. Put her in.
Yeah,
Whatever she needs. In itself, it's definitely a standalone song. You can take it out of the musical. It's hilarious, but also intense and contemplative. The song is, for those who don't know, it is making jest of women of leisure. Mm-hmm. Pretty much it starts off by saying, let's give a toast to ladies who lunch, you know, like they're married, and they go to lunch, and then they go to a fitting, and it's making fun of all these little frivolous things that people are doing, either because they're rich and they have nothing better to do, or because they've made being a wife their personality, and that's their defining feature. And then toward the end, though, it shifts where Joanne is clearly being self-critical. So she's being funny because we all know these people, but really she is that person, and she's feeling very judgy about herself. What's my purpose? What am I doing? And it becomes pretty solemn. And in this production, it was played
angry.
Angry.
She's just mad. Yeah.
A lot of resentment towards herself, towards her life, which and yeah, and it's a toast, but it's not a happy
And
toast.
it starts angry is notable. It's not like if the anger sort and resentment built over the course of it, when she realizes that the song is actually a self-flagellation, I could kind of roll with that. But she's at 11 from the start.
I'm thinking about this song a lot. Because I think there's three verses, right? And the first one is usually you can break it down like an acting exercise. And you can imagine sitting in a class and the teacher would say, the first beat you're going to play light, like a drunk woman who's just like, let's toast to the people, and they're silly and they do these things and they wear these outfits. And the second one, I don't know, you change the tone just a little bit. So maybe you're a little more pointed, like insulting. And
Yeah,
then the third one,
sharper.
so you play those with three beats, and I definitely could see the build across Gabby's performance where it did get angrier and angrier, but when you're starting at a place of anger or intenseness, and it doesn't build in the same way.
Yeah. No, I think that's a really good way of encapsulating what maybe failed to really click with it. Okay, we've been down a bit. Let's pick people we like. We emphatically love their performances. Let's give one or two shout outs each from the rest of the ensemble.
I think that I really enjoyed Gabby's performance, as
Yes.
I really enjoyed Aidan's performance. And the thing is, with this cast, there are elements of everybody's performance that I could shout out and say things I liked. I am not sure that there is one person that worked incredibly better than other people for me. So maybe I'll just shout out individual components
Sure.
of things that I liked. I thought Kirsten Russell or Russell. I'm sorry, I don't know you, so I'm sorry for the pronunciation.
You were great in Blackbird.
Honey, so good. And I thought your Kirsten's acting beats were great. There were a lot of really funny moments, a lot of interesting beats. The pacing was great. Vocal tone was very clean and pleasant to listen to. Just Kirsten has a really nice speaking voice.
Yeah.
And I would get excited seeing the scenes. Same with Kristen Pellerin. I thought Kristen Pellerin and Shane Cardy's karate scene was charming, and it moved really well. I really liked that scene. I could say something nice about everybody's performance. Amy, which is Sydney Cochran. Amy performed Not Getting Married Today, which is a famous Powder song. I thought that was really well performed. And I thought Noah Beamer did a really excellent job of playing a really compassionate guy but also heartbroken when his wife doesn't want to get married, but understanding like a real person. And very conceptual piece. Like I felt very grounded, despite the fact that Buddy needs to learn how to say Bubi.
And he's the Jewish one.
Yeah, the Jew. Yeah, I was saying I thought it was funny. As a Jew, I liked his performance a lot. I think maybe he would be my one shout out.
Yeah,
I think and also had a beautiful singing voice. It was a well-rounded performance.
Yeah, and I would pretty much co-sign everything you said. Noah Beamer, I think, was a standout in the way that he played the emotional highs and lows of being so happy to get married, and then the crushingness of finding out he might not. And then we very briefly get to see his unspoken reaction to their reconciliation. The way he lifted her in that moment, I thought, was a very good staging choice. Just the lightness of their union being restored. That was really good. I really liked him. I would agree with you that Kirsten Russell was very, very strong as Jenny. The way that she played the when a nerd gets high, I thought just like, yeah, that whole book scene was really so strong. The way she performed all of that. Yeah, Richard Lamb also playing David to her Jenny. I thought that they were made for a very good couple. I've seen him many times. He's a very talented performer. Another one I really want to shout out is Sierra Holder, who played Marta. I really like what's the name of the song she sings, Another 100 People. I thought that was a very good rendition of that song. I thought she sang it really well. It's another, not quite a patter song in the same way as Not Getting Married, but has that same type of intensity. I think a lot of the score has what I would call musical pyrotechnics, if that makes sense. They're like, Sondheim is showing off in a lot of what he's writing here. And I think in a lot of ways that compensates for the lack of story, is that there are so many banger songs that people do remember and hold fondly, and it in a way distracts, not distracts, because no one's like missing the lack of story, and that's what a lot of people do love about this. For people like me who wish there was a bit more of that kind of narrative through line, I I both admire these types of pyrotechnic impressive songs for like, oh yeah, something cool is happening here, but also feel like, is this a crutch for enjoy the music and not the story? I don't know. I thought that Sierra Holder's performance of that song was really strong, in my opinion.
Really like that song. I think it really leans into life in New York,
Mm-hmm.
which is a key component of this musical. And maybe it was the only song that made me feel like this is set in New York City as opposed to being set other places, because it was sort of played in an empty stage with ageless people.
Yeah.
It felt a little bit. So I like that was a grounding song. It's also just a pretty song.
Yeah.
I forgot to shout someone out in my
Yeah,
initial.
go for it.
Maggie Walters as April, I thought
yes.
was delicious.
I was going to get to her next, so she was not going to be forgotten.
Okay, good. Please don't forget her.
Okay, can I say, okay, so in that Neil Patrick Harris 2011 version, they basically called everyone they know who was on TV to be in that production. That we had like Stephen Colbert played Harry, David was played by John Cryer, who else? There's like a lot of TV people, but April was played by Christina Hendricks, Joan from Mad Men. And while I love Christina Hendricks a lot, I feel like she was incredibly miscast in that role. And I understand why she felt like a logical choice for that, is because she is like a Marilyn Monroe-esque bombshell. But the fact that the character of April is like textually very dumb, she says that about herself, and she's a total space cadet who's kind of like completely out to lunch, haha. But to me, it was just like so jarring watching Christina Hendricks play that role, because the whole point of her character in Mad Men is you might judge her or misjudge her as, oh, she's so hot, there can't be much going on between her ears, and like she is the smartest person in the office. She uses her sexuality so strategically to get what she wants, to wield power in this space, and then to have her play, I'm hot and but also kind of dumb, just it felt just like violence to her talent in a way. What I loved about Maggie Walters's performance here is that it never felt like just like I'm pretty but dumb. It felt like there was something about her oddness that worked as like a character trait, that I don't actually feel like it was an insult to her intelligence, even if the character textually, she just kind of has a different way of relating to the world. I liked how in all of like the group dance scenes, there was something a little off about her dancing in a way that felt deliberate. Like she's just out of sync with everyone else in a way that I'm going to give the credit that was a deliberate choreography choice. Whether or not it was, keep that to you and your God, perhaps. But I think it works for the character, and like she's just so charming in a way that like I find it's understandable that like Bobby doesn't see a future with her, because he doesn't see a future with anyone. But I think like the way she did Barcelona, which is not nobody's favorite song from this show.
And I like Barcelona.
Yeah, it's okay. What do you like about it?
It's not my favorite, but it's okay. Let me get into. I'll get into my Maggie Walters.
Sure, please.
This character of April, I guess you as you're saying, it'd be really easy to play her as a dumb, ditzy person, and he's only interested in April because of her looks.
Yeah,
and she did not. Yeah, Maggie Walters is beautiful, she didn't play her that way. She didn't play April that way. It was more. She's a little airy, flighty, like
awkward is the word I would use. Like she's
like a fairy, and her head is just maybe a little spacey is the right way to describe it, and simple in the way that she presents information, and is very clear-headed in her strengths and her weaknesses, but also like deep, and it cuts from random places. She's not dumb, very EQ smart, understanding people. In that description of the story with the butterfly, and how she interacted with that person and said, I'm a human being, I'm a living person too, she's got backbone and knows what's going on, though she lives in a very constrained world, like very simplified, but I think that that's just a character trait, not a knock on her intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
Simple does not mean dumb.
Yeah.
And you could see why Aidan would like her. She is charming and, as you said, quirky and different in a fun way, and had a lot of different beats that made me want to root for her and made it very clear, like, and the way that Maggie Walters played April, it didn't seem like Bobby deserved her.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
She deserved
Well
someone
put.
that got all of her quirks and appreciated, and not that Aidan's Bobby was dismissive of them, but it clearly wasn't fully embracing her for herself, and she came across as just adorable. Yeah, when she puts her head on Bobby's shoulder at the end of Barcelona, and like, that moment, and then Bobby looks at the audience and goes, "Shit." That was so funny.
Yeah.
And that was so well done, and that was a highlight of the whole show. So I liked her.
Yeah, I feel like everybody in the room is charmed by her. And that's like mission accomplished for this take on this character. I feel like that's probably covers the cast pretty well. Apologies if there was anyone in it we didn't mention the purpose of shout outs, but you all had your moments, as Lori was saying. So I think we can probably close the book on the cast there. Is there any other topics you want to get into? We've been talking for a while, but there, there's always more infinite possibilities.
Yeah, look, there are a lot of nitpicky things that I could point out. I have notes about some directorial choices that just didn't work for me, or questions I have, I guess, about why some things were chosen. I think it would be not really productive, though, to point those out. I mean,
we've gone over a lot. I think we can save the nits for the pick-in later.
Yeah, I'm still really intrigued by Talk is Free Theater.
Of course, they're a great company.
They put on interesting shows, like the pieces that they pick are interesting. They are championing. Oh my god, championing new works and workshopping new things. So that's exciting to me. I think the curatorial aspect of this company is really strong, and there are a lot of really strong players.
Yeah, of course.
In the rotation, this one was not on the top of my list of their pieces, but that doesn't dissuade me from seeing future ones.
Yeah.
Or following these performers in future things, because they all had their moments to shine in different parts. Whether or not cohesively as a unit it ended up working is sort of irrelevant. I'm still looking forward to seeing what these performers can do.
And listen, this production I think is selling really well. They've already extended it before it even opened. If nothing else, I hope this is just a big cash cow for them that can then fund developing new works or small intimate pieces. Like, if they need to just do a Sondheim every so often to make a lot of money, I support it as, if nothing else, a shrewd economic choice. And they've been doing a lot of Sondheim. There was a whole article.
Can you reference, though, the fact that you said doing a Sondheim is a shrewd economic choice? Sondheim would be laughing at that, considering
doing Sondheim in the... You're 100% right, and I think that it's funny that you do point out that irony. Doing Sondheim in the 2020s after he has been made a saint of musical theater, I think, is a shrewd economic choice. And I don't want to reduce it to the shrewdness or market logic of that, because yes, Sondheim is an excellent writer. He made some of these really, truly important, meaningful pieces, these contributions to the musical theater, and there is clearly an artistic love and devotion to him that Talk is Free, having done multiple productions of his work to this point. Most recently, they did The Frogs. Who does The Frogs? Come on, people. So, they care about Sondheim. And the fact that they can take a famous flop like The Frogs and turn it into something that, I don't know if it necessarily became a big hit because they only did it for like a week at the Shaw Festival and then in Barrie, which is hard to get like the big Toronto audience to come to. But yeah, they care about Sondheim, and if Sondheim is able to do well for them financially, I'm all for it. R.I.P.
Yeah. Rip. I mean, what was the last one that his unfinished piece, Sondheim?
Oh yeah,
This
well,
is the end. This is us.
no, it's
This is
I forget what it's called. Let's look this up because this is gonna bug me if we don't.
2020. Here we are.
Here we are. That's the one. Yeah.
Here we are. I would bet that that's going to be the next one or two that they do, because knowing them, they're going to pick the quirky one that wasn't really finished, that came out posthumously. Such a fun word. Yeah, that's what they're going to do. I'm gonna call it that, or like
they're gonna
anyone can whistle.
Anyone can whistle. Maybe Follies, ones that like
Yeah.
haven't had like a major Broadway production in a while. That's what I think they'll focus on. Anyway,
Yeah.
we're playing armchair literary manager for Talk is Free right now.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
I'm kidding.
Thanks for making it to the end. We're sorry that we were a little down on this one, but we love and appreciate the work you do. And we look forward to whatever the next one is, Sondheim or otherwise.
Look, if we said that everything was amazing every single time,
you couldn't trust us,
then we wouldn't be trustworthy.
Yes, exactly. We would be agents of deceit. We are not. You can take our honest word for it.
Now, my final question for you is,
okay.
Did this production of Company shift your opinion about Company as a musical?
That is an interesting thought. Because
you came in saying you were open to it. So I would like to know, did it shift it? Did it not?
I think in a way, and this maybe feels mean to this production, talking through the things that didn't work about this one does make me appreciate the superstructure of it all. I have seen well done versions of it. I have seen less well done versions, even less well done than this one. I've seen community theater productions of it that, don't quite hit the mark in a lot of ways. And when I describe it as boring, it's probably thinking back to particular memories of those types of. And this one wasn't boring. I was captivated the whole time. I don't think it makes it move up in my rankings of Sondheim pieces, but I have an appreciation for it. And if nothing else, there are individual great songs in it that I really love. The story doesn't really work for me, even somebody who's in his early 30s and currently single. I don't relate to Bobby. I feel like I should relate to Bobby in where I am in my life. And yet maybe I don't like him as a person enough. I think he's a cad and a scoundrel, and maybe I find the queer reading compelling because it can at least put layers into why does he behave the way he does, especially with the women, the one like April whose name he doesn't even remember. I don't like him. And that's nothing against Aidan's performance. It's nothing against any particular performance. And nothing against Neil Patrick Harris or Raul Espreza or any of the great Bobbies there have been. I just don't love Bobby as a guy. And I think since he is the closest thing to a story we get in this famously non-narrative concept musical, I think you gotta really like him for it to work. When he sings Being Alive, I can recognize technically what a brilliant piece of music this is, and when it's sung well, man, it hits. But I don't feel like it is a great culmination of his arc. And hearing the stuff you said about how even Sondheim agrees with that, and it's not necessarily the ending he wants, I'm still glad that he wrote it and that we have it in the canon of musical theater. But I don't know if this is really answering your question. I think there's a lot to appreciate in Company, but I sadly fail to appreciate it for a variety of reasons that might just be unique to me. How about you? Did it change your estimation of it? Did it affirm the things that you really love about it, or did seeing the fact that some of it can stumble in this way maybe challenge its supremacy within the Sondheim canon for you?
Let me flip it on its head. I saw Merrily We Roll Along on Broadway 2 years ago, a year and a half, 2 years ago. Time is construct. And that was a piece that I really didn't like going into it. And I still think it's a flawed musical. It doesn't fully work. But with a brilliant cast, those three leads made me love that production. It's one of my favorite shows I've seen on Broadway. And that's despite it being, in my mind, an incomplete musical.
Yeah.
So that flipped my mind about something. Merrily is still not one of my favorite Sondheim shows, but I appreciate it in a way that I never did before. I still think Company as a piece is stronger. I think it is more cohesive. I think it works better. It's charming. I like the character of Bobby. I find him interesting. I like thinking about Sondheim's internal dialogue with himself and how that blends into the piece. I think connection and relationships and people being transient parts of your life versus forming meaningful connections. I think that's so compelling. So the material is still really strong for me. And this production just, I don't know how to say this except for saying this. It made me want to see a different production and see a different take on it. So in a weird way, that makes me more enthusiastic about Company. So maybe it didn't really change my mind. I still like it, but I would like to see a different interpretation that is more in line with maybe my narrow-minded, what I've been accustomed to know about this show.
I think
my narrow-minded perspective.
I think that's perfectly valid and a fine note to end on. Well, yeah. Unless you want to say something positive, more positive to send people home smiling. Want to think? Here's a thought I have. This is I don't know. This is like a weird way to end this discussion. One of what I think might actually be definitely not my favorite song, but one of the stronger songs, in my opinion, in this show is Sorry Grateful. I think like the contradictions about marriage that are expressed by the men singing that song about all of the things that they don't like about being married, but also like, and then how it just feels right. I think part of what I don't love narratively about this show is that could have been the end of it. That is a thesis statement of a song if ever there was one, and it's essentially the same thesis statement that Bobby comes to over an hour later in Being Alive. And Being Alive, I think, is a superior song musically and just like hits you when it's done really well. But one of the third song in the show states the thesis outright, and then we have to pretend like we hadn't heard it so we can get a big emotional gut punch when the protagonist finally internalizes that message that he could have gotten right away in that moment. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And I think it's really interesting to think about, again, thinking about Sondheim's connection to the material and what is the message that he is trying to say? What are we supposed to take away from this piece? Is it kind of circular, and that what they say in the beginning is the conclusion that he's saying in the end? And I think it's funny to think about the fact that the original ending was going to be a downer. It was going to be marriage is a joke. We shouldn't do it, which is, I guess, in line with what a single guy in his 30s trying to justify to himself why this is my choice would write, and then was told by producers, no, it has to be upbeat. So then he like tongue in cheek writes this incredible song. What is the point we're trying to get away with? And I guess for me, I'm okay with the messiness of some of the songs are, yeah, marriage is really hard. Some of them are, but we really love each other. Life is full of those ups and downs. And maybe that's just how we live. And I'm okay with a non-committal, I'm willing to give it a try, because what else are we supposed to do? Like, you don't have to have a definitive, this is the way to live, or you do. Maybe I'm rambling now.
Yeah. Keep going. You're onto something, Bobby. You're onto it. Keep going. Don't stop.
No, I guess what you were saying, at least what I was taking out of it, that you were criticizing that the piece didn't have a consistent aha moment that we're supposed to walk away with as an audience saying, like,
I don't think that's my critique as much. It's more that I feel like that aha moment Could have.
Came too early.
It comes too early,
Yeah.
but then we still spend most of the musical pretending we haven't had that moment so that being alive can serve as the aha moment. Honestly, like,
Yeah.
I think Sorry Grateful should have come where Ladies Who Lunch goes. Flip those two songs. I don't find Joanne's proposition to Bobby logically brings us to being alive in the way that the musical thinks it does. But I think Sorry Grateful could. So if we had Sorry Grateful and then Bobby hearing all of his male friends talk about, despite its contradictions, marriage is worthwhile, and then he sings Being Alive, that's how I would script doctor the show. It would take away from the messiness that you and other people like so much about it. But I think narratively that would work so much better.
No, I'm okay with it going all over the place, going to something, coming back to it, because I guess that more mimics someone's internal dialogue and probably Sondheim himself's internal thoughts about, oh, I want to be married. And then the next day he's like, nah, that's crap. I don't want to do that. And then, oh, I want to, because that's life, like going back and forth a little bit. And it doesn't need to be neat and tidy and wrapped in a bow, which I could understand could hurt people.
So, and yeah, so if the frustration of that is the point, then I can understand. Maybe I would have liked
I don't even think it's frustration. It's just like existing.
Yeah.
It's just, that's what it is. Sometimes it's great. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes things make sense. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes I think this. Sometimes I think the exact opposite. I don't know. And I think the ending for me is Bobby finally coming to the realization that what he's been hearing other people sing about, like maybe it's worth exploring further, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
In a way that feels more earned. Like he sings, I'm ready earlier in the piece, but he doesn't really feel ready.
Yeah, I agree
like
that
he's
Marry
trying
Me
to
a
tell
Little,
himself that.
Marry Me a Little feels like that kind of bundle of
Which is a
contradiction.
great song.
Yeah.
So I think I'm okay with being a little messy with conclusions and also with coming back to thoughts, contradicting yourself, revisiting themes that were visited in earlier songs. As a concept musical, that seems pretty realistic in life. People don't always come to neat, tidy conclusions. They might contradict themselves and probably is very in line with Sondheim's internal dialogue at the time, trying to grapple with himself being single in his 30s and discussing if he wants to have kids or if he wants to settle down at all and what does he want his life to look like. So I am okay with that, especially in a piece that isn't claiming to be a strict narrative structure.
Right.
Musical.
Yeah, I think you're right about that, and thank you for articulating it that way. When I said a moment ago that I think so maybe the frustration is the point, I guess it's not so much that frustration is the point or the point is to frustrate, is the point is to express the realism of that messiness, as you're saying. And me as somebody who does like tight narrative structure is frustrated by that messiness, but I should reflect on how my feeling of that frustration could be the point for me, not for everybody consuming it, but to grapple with that tension is a worthwhile endeavor.
And I think some people might not be into concept musicals.
Yeah,
I mean,
they're not my favorite type. I know that about myself.
And some people prefer like a big budget spectacle, which is totally cool too. I mean, I love The Lion King. Wicked's great, but I also like these kind of more make you think in a different way pieces and make you question your own perspectives on things. There's a place for both.
Yeah, you're here to that. A toast to the both of those who I don't know what I'm saying. We've been talking for a while. I think this is a fine place to end this conversation. Lori, thank you so much for joining me for yet another circuitous but fascinating conversation about a musical set in New York City that Sondheim had some influence over. Some in this case.
That was a long one.
That's okay. Oh, I had a great time. You're always fun to talk about theater with. You're a great guest. We will have you back, of course, if you want to be.
Thank you so much. I am so excited to be back, and to be invited back again would be great. I love sharing my thoughts and talking to you, who is so knowledgeable in theater and then just literary knowledge more broadly.
Oh, shucks. And this is not my
Very,
expertise. I have stressed this many times about this episode. This type of musical is certainly not my expertise. It's a bit of a weak spot in my knowledge here. So I'm glad you got something
I
out of this
don't,
conversation.
I disagree. I think that's incorrect.
Agree to disagree.
I really appreciate being invited back, and yeah, I look forward to seeing more shows.
Yeah,
Woo!
always a pleasure. Woo, where can people find and follow you and read about more of your theater thoughts?
I freelance for Next Magazine, so I would always encourage you to check out those reviews. They're a lot of fun, whether or not I'm the person writing them. Always insightful and good reads. I'm on girllikestheater.com, which is my blog, which I write for when I'm not writing for the magazine. And I am on LinkedIn because I don't really use other social medias. So I would encourage you not to use LinkedIn unless you would like to connect in that way.
In a
But I
business
am there.
capacity, strictly.
Yeah, I hate when people do personal things on LinkedIn. Like I'm sorry your dog died. I really am, but this is not the platform to discuss how it impacted your social media marketing outreach strategy.
Unless you're a veterinarian or own a pet cemetery or something where that is relevant to your business.
Even then,
Even then,
like you got it. No, I don't want to see that. But yeah, so girllikestheater.com and Next Mag.
Yeah. Same for me. Next Mag also. Cheers to our colleagueship over there. You can also hear more of my theater thoughts here on The Cup. I'm on many episodes of this for coming up on almost 300 episodes. Woo. Hey, we got to do something special for 300. Yeah, find and follow us at COH Theater on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We are Cup of Hemlock Theater on YouTube, where you might be watching this, Cup of Hemlock Theater podcast, and all the podcast places where you might be listening to this with your ears. Once again, Lori, thank you so much for joining me. Thank you, Talk is Free Theater, for giving us a lot to say about this show. And stay healthy, stay safe, and we will see you all in the next episode. Cheers.